Welcome to Nerd Initiative Variant Edition. That's where comics come to life. I'm Megan from Nerd Initiative, where we like to dive into the world of comic books, bringing you insightful interviews with the creators, writers, and artists behind your favorite stories. Whether you're a diehard fan of superheroes, indie gems, graphic novels, or the latest genre-defying releases, this is the place for you. From discussing the creative process to breaking down the big ideas shaping the comic book world, we've got it all. So grab your favorite issue, sit back, and join us as we explore the infinite variants of the comic book universe. On today's episode of Nerd Initiative Variant Edition, we have a very special guest that I'm so excited to introduce. She's the genius behind so many comic books we've all read and loved, like Birds of Prey, Mr. and Mrs. X, Black Cloak, Black Widow, and most recently, Absolute Wonder Woman. So, a huge welcome to Kelly Thompson. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Megan. I'm so excited to be here.
I am too. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Um, I'm a comic book writer. I currently live in Portland, Oregon with my partner and two amazing cats who slightly inspired Jeff, the creation of Jeff the Land Shark. Um, I pretty much just do comics. I have a very small little comics making life, but I like it. I'm currently writing Absolute Wonder Woman, Birds of Prey. I did a one shot for It's Jeff, which comes out next week, which is his longest print uh, uh, adventure, let's say that, yet. And I'm also writing Black Cloak, which is a creator-owned series. And yeah, I've got some interesting stuff on the horizon. Sadly, nothing I can tease quite yet, but it's been a really great, cool, interesting year. It's been really fun.
Honestly, with all the stuff you have been coming out with, I don't think we would even need a tease because everything has been so, like, you're a busy woman. You've got a lot going on.
It helps that I don't have children or a busy life. It's part of the reason I don't have a busy life. I need a lot of space in order to work. So, like a lot of quiet and a lot of calm and not a lot of like wildness. I'm not a great sort of multitasker. I did a podcast slash Scott Snyder through his Substack runs like a comic book writing class, and I came on that to like guest host with him last week. And he's incredibly prolific. He writes even more than I do, but he also has like a wife who's a doctor and three children and like a whole thing that's like not even, and just talking to him, his dedication is pretty incredible because of those other very full life things he has. He's a lot more disciplined about like, well, I've got to get up before I take these kids to school and write for an hour or whatever. And let me tell you what, I've done that. I'm not great at it. I do better with a little more space. I do better with if I have to write till 3 a.m. to get it in, that's okay, and that kind of thing. But when you got to get a kid to preschool in the morning, 3 a.m. is pretty hard.
I can attest to that. I have two kids, and there's absolutely no freaking way. Even if I had the
Yeah,
talent, it would not be happening.
yeah. It's very hard. Well, it really speaks to his dedication, but it gave me a lot of pause hearing him talk about it, of like how different our lives are, even though we're in this very similar industry and currently writing these titles that somewhat go together. It seems like our lives should be similar, but they are not.
Well, some people also work in such a different way. Like, some people like the chaos, and some people just like, just to keep their minds and not lose it. But when you have kids, it's like
Yeah.
you kind of have already lost your mind. So what can you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what inspired you to become a comic book writer?
So when I was very young, I first encountered comics in Archie digests that were like at my grocery store, not even a spinner rack, just in the checkout line, like next to the magazines. And I don't know why my mom bought me one the first time, but she was in for it then because I begged basically every time I went to the grocery store from there on out to get a new Archie. And she was fairly indulgent if she had known it would lead to what it led to, maybe she would not have been. So I really loved the form without even really understanding that there was a whole world of comics outside of that. We also had comics. We didn't have a, my mom was a big library. She was a big reader. She is a big reader and she's a big library goer. And so our house never had like a big library like the way I do. Like I have nothing but a library. Um, but there were still comics around, like we had some Far Side collections weirdly, and of course you read in the newspaper, you can get comics that way, but like none of it sort of hat tipped to me that there was this whole industry of making comic books. I didn't understand that until much later, and the first time I cared to understand it and know about it and investigate it was when my brother and I were teens. We saw the X-Men the animated series, and we were like, this is the greatest show of all time. How can we not know about this? We thought it was incredible. We were so obsessed with it. And in my memory, I can't say for sure how long it was, but in my memory, it's not long after we discovered the show. My brother came home from the mall, both of my brothers, but one of them in particular, who was a bigger comic nerd, Scott, he came up from home from the mall, jumping up and down with a comic book that had Storm on the cover. It was Uncanny X-Men 280. And or 290, shit, I've forgotten. Anyway, Will's Portacio Storm cover, and he's like, look, it's the girl from the show, it's the girl from the show. And I was like, oh my god. And that was it. We were obsessed. My brother David also came home with X-Force number 3, I think, but ownership is 9/10 of the law, and both of those are in my garage now. Anyway, yeah, we became super fans, and I had wanted to be a writer since I was very young. So much so that in 4th grade we had to make T-shirts for some kind of assembly, like you had to draw on them with like puff paint and stuff or something, and you were supposed to draw about what you wanted to do. And I drew a book and put authors. So like I wanted to do that from very young, but I think I also wanted to draw, like most kids. We spend a lot of time drawing when we're little, and I had the notion that I was better at it than some kids, but I was never going to be as good as I wanted to be, or at least I did not possess the discipline to become better. And so I sort of shrugged off that I could be an artist, but a writer I thought maybe I could do. But as a teenager, when I rediscovered comics, I was like, wait, this merging of art and words, like this is what I'm looking for. This is what I love, and that was it. I was hooked.
First of all, I love your family style. Huge X-Men fan myself, so that hit home. Oh, I love that so much. I love that it was you and your family who was into it.
I mean, not my parents, but my brother for sure. And Dave to a degree. He liked the show. He watched it with us a lot, but I think it was very clear to him that even though he liked it, he didn't like it the same way Scott and I did. And that was
Hmm.
probably a little bit othering for him. I mean, I was far too self-involved as a teenager to like process that or understand that. But like I can see it more clearly now that like that probably felt a little weird. But I will say that even then, as a selfish teenager, I did try to get Dave into it. He wasn't a big reader back then. He's still not as big a reader as Scott and I are, but I would like read comics with him. Like we'd sit together on the couch and read them because I wanted him to be into it like Scott and I were, because it was, when you find a hobby that you just really take to like that, or a vocation, if you want to make it one eventually, I don't know. It just is really consuming, especially when you're a kid and you have all that free time and, no responsibilities basically. So I think I wanted it for Dave too, but it just never sort of worked out the same way for him. But I always appreciated that he tried and that he did like it, just not like we did.
Yeah, I think there's some people who can find some kind of passion in it, and other people who are like, this is entertaining. It's there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
So, is there a favorite comic book that you've written that you have that holds a special place to you, like some kind of emotional connection?
Um, I I think it's hard to pick favorites. I think Absolute Wonder Woman number 1 is my favorite thing I've ever done from tip to tail. I have incredible collaborators who have made it just an incredible experience. But I would say even if you strip that away, if I just look at that script, it's the script I'm most proud of as far as it really doing what it needs to do. That said, that script is sort of nothing without Hayden and Jordy and Becca all really bringing their A game and breathing real life into it. Prior to Absolute Wonder Woman, um, I probably would have said maybe some issues of Black Widow,
Okay.
um, which I really love. That series with Elena Casagrande, also a Jordi Belair. I've also got some issues of Hawkeye I really, really love. Um, and there's some stuff in Jessica Jones in the Purple Daughter run that, man, working with Madia, I just absolutely love that. And then working with Madia and Meredith on Black Cloak and the Cull, creator-owned books. You know, typically I find the creator-owned books much more rewarding. Although I have to say, I think Absolute Wonder Woman sits in that weirdly, even though it's a big two book and one of the biggest books I've ever done. It sits in that creator-owned place a little bit where it feels really personal and sort of passionate in a way that you sometimes don't get in big two books or work for hire work, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of your current project, Absolute Wonder Woman, which I got to review it for nerdinitiative.com. I gave it a hard 10 out of 10. I loved it from up and down, back to front. What was your inspiration behind this story? Like, how did it all come together?
I think I the story I've told before so far is that I was very excited to get the offer to do it, but I was very intimidated, especially because the Wonder Woman book in the main line happens to be in like a very strong place right now. I know some people don't like it, but it's selling very well. It's got beautiful art. It's got a very consistent team, and I personally think it's quite good. So I think I was nervous about that. You don't want to be the other Wonder Woman book, you know? And so I came in feeling pretty intimidated. And then that was before I even tried to think about, well, what are you going to do now? Like everything's, she's been reinvented a bunch of times. We've seen so many iterations of her in her stories over the years. How are you going to find something that really hasn't been done and that feels authentic to her while also feeling new? Like it felt like an impossible task. And I hated all my ideas. I had a notebook, a Moleskine notebook full of several pages of like crossed out ideas going, we've seen it before and I hate it, and you know, all these things crossed out. And I kept running into a wall that every idea that seemed like it maybe had legs in a high concept way felt like she was depowered in some way, or she didn't have her compassion, like she was raised as a god of war or a child of war or something. Like, so none of it was really working. But among all these notes that I'd scratched out, I had one that said, which Wonder Woman raised in hell by an enemy? And then I had like Circe with like 5 question marks next to it. And I was like, that one, that's something. I can see that. Like if I think about that, I can like see the petals of that starting to sort of unfold of to all it could be. And I also saw a way that if I give her like this powerful feminist witch mother, that even if she's in hell, we can still have love. They can have love between them. That can be transformative for them both, and it can help keep what's innate to Diana, her compassion and her kindness and her goodness. It can, instead of hell drumming that out of her, it can, she can be nurtured by sort of a basically a feedback of love. Like as she loves Circe, Circe loves her back, and so it creates a home setting amongst hell. And then I realized that if we could pull that off, that the location and all the big dramatic visual changes and ideas would actually make that love sort of shine even more brightly and powerfully, and that if we played it right, it could truly be powerful about sisterhood, about motherhood, about the transformative power of love, and also about giant swords and killing kaiju-sized things with them.
Wow, that I I love that you had an entire list and it's nothing felt right. I'm glad you landed on this idea because I think it's a banger of an idea. So, have you always been
Thank you.
a you're welcome. Have you always been a big fan of Wonder Woman?
Not always. I mean, I think I was always intrigued by her.
Mm-hmm.
When I was reading comics a lot and not reading Wonder Woman comics when I was younger, like, Adam Hughes was doing like some of the most gorgeous Wonder Woman covers you've ever seen for like long runs of time. And so I was always intrigued by her. And there were stories of hers I'd read that I'd really liked, most notably Greg Rucka's stuff. Not just Hikatia, which is always really fun, but Eyes of the Gorgon and things like that. I think he does some of the best plotting for Wonder Woman's books and brings characters in a really interesting way. But even in Greg's stuff, and he's one of my favorite writers, so it was surprising to me, and I assumed it was just that maybe I didn't like Diana that much because I still wasn't really connecting to her the way I would expect to be in reading a writer's work that I loved. And so it wasn't until a few years later when I read Gail Simone's run, that was when she actually cracked through for me as a character that I loved and a character that I understood better, because she had always felt a little sort of reserved and proud and cold in a way that I don't really respond to. And there was something about Gail's approach that had like a humor and a humanness to it and a lightness, and just the comedy, the idea of her finding things funny. I don't know, something in that run, I fell in love with her, and it stuck forever. So now I take that version of Diana that I fell in love with, I sort of take her everywhere. So now when I go back and read Eyes of the Gorgon, it's so much more powerful to me because I care so much more about Diana. And now I'm like, yeah, this is one of the best Diana stories. I just needed to find my place with her before I could fully appreciate it. So that's sort of how I got to her. I used to write an op-ed column for Comics Should Be Good called She Has No Head, that was about women in comics. And the the post I wrote about Wonder Woman was about Wonder Woman being a gateway drug, and how Gail Simone was sort of the one that opened that door for me. It was really powerful, and I was really excited that it didn't fade as I read her in, various other incarnations, that maybe I liked this one better than that one or whatever, but she just sort of shined through no matter what. Even if I read stories I didn't like with her, I still loved her. And I think more than anything, that's what I wanted to tap into for people. I think she's a truly spectacular character in a lot of ways. I mean, Batman is one of my favorite characters in all of comics. Like I'm not special. I'm like everyone else. We all love Batman. It's an incredibly cool idea. And I also like that Batman, over everything, is his goodness, really, right? To like stand against all of that and like never give up. Like, what a good man. I'm very into that. But like, he can't hold a candle to Diana, like what she can do, what she represents, the kindness, the way she approaches things. Um, and listen, she has an advantage over him. He has to be a different way because he's not, literally blessed by gods with superpowers. So it demands them to be different, and that's part of what is so cool about the Trinity, I think, actually.
Wow. You said so many cool things. First of all, Gail Simone seems to have that impact on people where she just makes you fall in love with characters that you before you're like, I mean, they exist. And she has a weird way about them. But also, I love that you fell in love with Wonder Woman and you kept that love. It was like something turned on in you and it just
Yeah,
stayed on no matter what.
yeah. It was a
Oh,
great thing. I do think it's one of the ways that a lot of comic book readers are able to survive, because we've all been through, let's just use X-Men because we can use that with a broader brush than we can Wonder Woman. X-Men as comics have incredible heights and, my God, some incredible lows. And, I never stopped loving Rogue or Gambit in all the shitty fucking stories they were in. And let me tell you what, read some really bad stories with Rogue and Gambit in them. But it never diminished me. I just looked at that writer and went, or artist, or both, and went, "What the fuck are you guys doing?" Like, I don't recognize who these people are. Like, stop doing this. You don't know what you're doing. And I get that we all have a sort of salt to taste. I'm not saying like, oh, it has to be exactly my way, blah blah blah. I just mean some things you're reading it and you're like, oh, this is bad. This is not a quality. Like, people did not put thought and care into this. Maybe they were rushed. Maybe something happened. Maybe they didn't do their research, but people did not care about this the way I want them to care if I'm going to invest. But again, I loved them, and so I didn't think poorly about them. I thought poorly about the writer. It's a little bit, not to make this about Captain Marvel, it's a little bit what really bothers me about the way a lot of fans treat Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
You know, she got some pretty rough handling in a few things, and she became a feminist icon. And when you put an icon like that on a pedestal, a lot is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I never saw people going, writer X, you see it, but you rarely see it. Instead, they just say Carol sucks, and that's just not true. She's a great character. She's a fantastic character. She's had some really bad stories. Show me a great character that's been around a long time that hasn't. It just doesn't exist. So,
I agree. Trust me, I'm a Spider-Man fan, and it has been hard.
oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
That's rough. You guys are never happy. That's a hard fandom, I have to say. You know, I only got a little taste of it when I did Beyond, but that's tough.
I'm
It's a tough
I'm
fandom.
pretty easy to please when it comes to comics. I'll take what you give me, and if I don't vibe with it, I'm fine. I still got more content. But it is a scary, scary
Yeah.
fandom, and just like the people who hate on Captain Marvel, it is a scary, scary fandom
Yeah.
that some need to just go take a nap. You got a lot going on.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I feel like maybe so I should clarify this because I feel like maybe I was preaching the opposite a minute ago. I think what I would say is a human being, even if it's a writer who wrote a shitty story about a fictional character you love, you should still
Hmm.
be not an asshole to that shitty writer, even if they're
Yeah.
really bad. It's still a human being. Like, please, God, let's practice some kindness here. Your character will probably survive, even if she's Captain Marvel and people try to take her out a bunch of times. She'll survive, and I don't know, man, a little bit of kindness never hurt anybody.
Yeah, I mean, the
Be
comics,
like
whether
Diana.
you, yeah, be like Diana. Like, the comics, whether you like them or not, they don't hurt you. They don't have an impact on your life. Just don't read them. Move on. Read something else. There's so much more to read.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
Free
so
yourself.
full.
Free yourself.
Free.
I was just watching one of my favorite shows, which I just talked about on my Substack, so apparently I'm obsessed now, is The Expanse, which is a sci-fi television show that was on Sci-Fi Network and then it was on Prime. It's like 6 seasons long.
Okay.
It's basically about humanity in the future when they've expanded their reach to Mars and the Belt, which are like asteroids in the belt, moons and things. And you know, they're trying to survive as humanity, and they see each other as othered and everything. And there's a great character who, handled incorrectly, would just be way too saccharine for me. But she has this line where a character who is a quick to kill kind of a character, he says something that just makes her realize he's just filled with hate. And she's like, hate is a burden. You don't have to carry it. And honestly, I find that very freeing. Nobody is asking you to carry hate around. If you can just let it go, man, it's a it's a freeing thing.
I agree. And I think that's perfectly said. Now I might actually have to try out the Expanse.
Well, I just think not to get on my soapbox only to fall right off, but like it hurts you more than anyone else you're trying to hurt, right? It's so
Hmm.
toxic for your life. If you can let it go, especially with comics, it's so silly to get so upset over comics. These are completely transitional things. They go through phases, and it'll come back to you, and it'll be great to rediscover it, But yeah,
No, I totally agree. It There's just so much toxicity in the world. Why add to it? So,
yeah.
y- uh, how do you approach the process of writing a comment? Is there a specific routine or process when starting a new project?
I think. I mean, the early beginnings are always super fun. The world building, everything's shiny and new and has no problems yet. It's very tempting and delicious. I usually do like sort of brainstorming stuff. I do oh my God, I forget what it's called. It's like a tree kind of a thing where you so it's a brainstorming technique. I'm so brain dead. I've written about it on Substack and I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, it's like a free association. It's supposed to like free you up rather than like creating a nice neat list or something. It's more open than that. I
Okay.
always do some of that when I'm starting a project, or certainly if I get stuck. Um, Once I've got sort of character stuff down, I will try to always do an outline. When I wrote my first novel, I did not have a good outline and I got lost in the woods and it was terrifying and it took way too long to get out of there. So I always try to do that now. But I would say one of the things that comes very early for me, dialogue is something I really like. It's a strength of mine. It's one of the ways that I find my way into a character. The things they want to talk about, the way they respond to things, how their cadence is, all of that. So I'll find myself on a new project writing a lot of little dialogue tags, just like snippets of dialogue that I think maybe will fit or maybe I'll use. And some of those make it all the way through to the final comic. Some of them deleted, some of them get changed. But that's a big key for me to get the characters right. I find if I do that part correctly of my process, a lot of the writing is easier because I just know the characters. I just know what they're going to do in these situations, and I don't have to worry so much about is this right? Is this authentic? Does this feel true? You know, so it's helpful.
That I didn't realize like so much went into the process. I'm not a writer, so like this is all magic voodoo to me. That's really cool. I like that kind of process. That sounds like something I would do. It's very cool. And it obviously pays off. And we gotta talk about your team. With Absolute Wonder Woman, Hayden Sherman was on art while Jordi Belair handled the colors and Becca Carey was on letters. And I think they 100% nailed it on all fronts. I think you guys were a dream team and the perfect dream team for Absolute Wonder Woman. How do you collaborate with artists to bring your script to life?
Think every artist writer collaboration is a little different. And I think, you know, in the case of Hayden and I, we did not know each other. I mean, we knew of each other and we were friendly vaguely, but we didn't have a relationship. We'd never worked together. So, you know, it's always a bit of a finding out, you know, it's like getting to know each other, finding out what they want, what they don't want. Um, in Hayden's case, they're very fast, very good, very fast. They are really good storytellers. So, and I'm very interested in sort of the panel layouts they're interested in and all of that innovation that they bring to the table. So there's very little hand holding in that case. I just think they're very good and you really don't have to watch them. They bring a lot of their own innovation to the script. So I feel like as long as I give them something powerful, they really respond to it and they respond in kind and they bring their own power to it. And then where we end up is somewhere quite great. It's been a really fantastic experience. I've worked with Jordy a lot. She's probably my favorite colorist to work with, partly because we just know each other very well at this point, and partly just because I really trust her instincts. I'm pretty out of step with how a lot of coloring in modern comics is done. Like I really hate super shiny, over rendered, you know, super digital looking stuff, and that's honestly most stuff out there. And I'm not even swinging on it. That's just the phase we're in, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it. I don't like it. And so
Yeah.
when I go to Scarlet, I ask for someone like Lee Lowridge, who I know can bring more dimension to that, a softer palette, more lighting choices, more stylistic choices as opposed to realistic choices. Jordy is very much the same. Um, It's also, when Jordy was doing Birds of Prey, she was doing like a completely wild, like pulpy retro thing where it was like a little off register and like parts of it wouldn't even be colored in. And man, I was so into that. I was so into it because it was unlike anything we're seeing now. It really stood itself out. So I think Wonder Woman is not as different as that, but it's still like wildly bold. It's just not the what how a normal sorry Jordy, I don't mean you're not normal, but it's not how a normal average colorist would approach the page. She just has a completely different perspective, and it works well for me because not only do I trust her instincts, but we're mostly aligned. We've had a couple little Wonder Woman fights that are sort of hilarious, that are about like very specific nuances where we don't see eye to eye, and we've worked out our differences on those for the most part. But I think her instincts are incredible. Hayden's too. And honestly, Becca, I've been working with Becca for over a year. She does the lettering on my Black Cloak book, and she also, her first pass, I mean, you don't understand when you're doing a new book like this, especially a big launch like this, there's so many questions you have to answer on the lettering front in the first issue. You have to establish all your baselines of these are what captions look like, and these are how we do locator caps, and this is the font, and this, there's so much stuff. And because this was such a big launch, and because we're using all this weird stuff like, oh, sometimes we're in hell, and sometimes she speaks a weird magic language, and sometimes these things say things that are also sound effects, like, there was all this really weird stuff, and man, she hit it out of the park. It was one of the cleanest first passes I've ever seen on a book like that, and she just keeps delivering. It's an incredible team. I feel so grateful that they let me do it with them.
They're, like I said, you guys are a dream team. I think everyone complements each other so, so well. And I agree. Becca is so good at letters, and she did do really well in Cloak. That was also something I noticed. So when you do write a comic book, do you like to have a lot of input on the visual side, or are you more, let's see what you got, let's see if we agree with it?
Well, I would say the only time I'm a problem other than deadlines, I'm always late lately, and I'm working on it, everyone, if you're listening. Um, the only time I'm a real problem child is if we just don't get the right fit of the team. And if the art isn't right or the colors aren't right or something, it basically creates a problem until until we're done. And it doesn't mean that the work isn't good. It just means we're not really a good team that's like in sync. Um, but that's usually very obvious to me right away. Within that first issue, you sort of know, like, not only are the styles meshing, but are the personalities meshing. I think the most important thing editors do, probably great editors, are build the right teams. And I've been very lucky to have the right team most of the time. Um, in the case of, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm going to blame the COVID vaccine I took. Um, so what I was going to say is I am very involved in the art in the sense that I like to look at layouts, because I hope I don't give any notes after layouts. Like, unless we have like a little thing we've missed or a mistake we've made or something, I don't ever want to give notes after layouts, because layouts are the time that it's easy to change it for an artist, and that's not a huge ask. So I like to see layouts because A, I'm a control freak and I want to make sure we're hitting everything right, and B, because I don't want to ask for any changes later. All that said, even though I'm very hands-on, I try to be very respectful of the artist part of it. It's not my job to make them do what I see. My job is to create a great script as a blueprint for them to then do their best work. So I try to get out of the way as much as possible. I only flag things in layouts if I think they've missed something, or maybe I've missed something in the script, and so when we're looking at it on the page, it's not working because we needed an extra beat or something, like that. But I have to tell you, when you work with someone like Hayden, they really catch that. We have little notes back and forth because we're doing some complicated stuff, so I always have a few notes on their layouts. But if I missed something, or like we needed an extra panel or something, I mean, when they turn in the layouts, they've just done that because they can just clock that and adjust for it, and it's really impressive. you always hope you're I can't believe I'm going to make a sports analogy, but a lot of guys who love basketball, for example, talk about like a player's IQ. And they don't mean how smart they are. They mean what a smart player they are. Like if they know how to, and that a smart player who has a high IQ on basketball just just performs better because they know how to, it's like you're in the middle of a thing and you're pivoting and you're changing and you're making it. And I think that that's a little bit like comics in the sense that working with someone who's an incredible storyteller who has a high IQ for the ability to do that, it's just a whole different experience than working for someone who needs to be told what's in every panel. I've taken to some of the stuff that I'll give to Hayden is less about what's happening in the panel, like what I'm asking for, and more an emotional thing. Diana is wrecked but can't raise her eyes. That's more about an emotion than a hey, let's see her in profile medium shot or whatever. You know what I mean? Because I think they know we're working on it. We're building a thing together. It's not my instruction that they follow. So.
I am learning so much from you. This is so cool. Wow. That's so exciting. So, how I don't want to ask because like I don't want to ask you for spoilers, but like it's a very hard question. Where do you want to see Diana go? Like, what would be
So
your dream thing for her to end up in?
I mean, I just want her to continue this adventure. I think she
Yeah.
has two missions. I think she has a mission to be this hero and to save the world from um, there's an implication in the first issue, and
Hmm.
a little bit more than an implication, that the Amazons were doing some work sort of in secret protecting the world, and that for some reason they are no longer doing that. And so Diana has sort of stepped in to fill that gap. I think she feels honor bound to do that. I think she feels a responsibility to do that. But I also think she feels, and we're going to see this more and more as we go along, her being sent to hell is a deep and powerful injustice done to
Yeah.
her, done to the world, done to the Amazons. And, when you do an injustice, sometimes people come to call on that. And so I don't really think about her mission being one of vengeance, but I think there's a lot of justice laced through it. Like it's time to pay these bills that are due. But her mission is also, and this is implied, I think, it's not said outright, but I think it's implied by the entirety of the first issue, is that she wants to find her fucking sisters.
Yeah.
Um, she wants what was stolen from her, and I do not think she will stop until she finds it or dies. So I want those things for her. I'm also, as a nerd, I'm very excited about other things like her meeting Batman and Superman, and like
Hmm.
what will they be able to build together when they realize they sort of need each other to, defeat what really is out there, all these larger than them things. But I'm also excited to get into, Diana's this first arc, this first 5 issues is very sort of kaiju focused, sort of monsters, right? Which
Hmm.
is a very specific kind of threat. It's a very different threat than the government or evil scientists or, Max Lord or Dr. Psycho or something. And so, I'm excited to get into those kind of things too, to see how she does with things that aren't giant monsters, which is maybe what she's a little more used to facing since she's been in hell. So it's like I like the idea that we set her up in this first issue to fight some of the biggest, craziest stuff you've ever seen. And it seems like she's like the greatest hero ever, but also she's been fighting that kind of stuff since she was little. What she hasn't been fighting is, the US military industrial complex or whatever, right? So I think there's a lot of really big challenges on the face of her. I can tease that issues 6 and 7, which are a guest alternate artist who hasn't been announced yet, but I'm very excited for people to hear. That will be a two-parter that takes place in hell, both currently and in flashbacks. So you'll get a lot of sort of fun flashback stuff about Diana's life and like what's going on with all of that, how she got out of hell in the first place, things like that. So really fun stuff. And then Hayden will be back for 8 through 12 or whatever it is, for like another arc like on the
Wow.
surface, dealing with, what's the new threat, etc.
That sounds amazing. I loved the scenes where she was in hell. You see Circe raising her, and poor girl didn't want a baby the whole time. But then, like, she has the baby of all babies, the angel, the
Yeah.
amazing one. And I could have read like 10 arcs just of their home life.
Well, the good news is there will be more stuff about that. I mean, not the same as that, but there will definitely be more stuff. And there's specifically in 4, there's some stuff that's more pointed about Circe's feelings about, you know, her life slash death being hijacked to become a mother.
Yeah.
I think, the point that she has that sort of conversation with someone, she's already in love with Diana. She already
Yeah.
knows it's transformed her life. So it's not that she wants to stop it from happening. It's not that she even feels like she could stop it from happening, but it is an angry moment of that you forced me into this. Like, it's a prison in a way, and
Hmm.
I'm happy to be locked in that prison now because it changed me, but I don't appreciate that I was not given a choice in the matter. I mean, I think the goddesses that made Diana end up on her island would argue, I mean, yeah, you could have let her die. You didn't have to do it. We did give you a choice. We didn't task you with keeping her alive, but I think Circe would say you're fucking splitting hairs.
But I get it. I mean, she thought she was just going to be chilling in hell by herself. No one wants to be surprised with a baby. I'm just going to
No,
say
but
it. No one wants that.
nobody wants that. But I think Hecate is Circe's like number one. She's like the number one devotee of Hecate, like her most beloved of beloveds, and Hecate is her number one Patreon, and I think Hecate would say, whether Circe wanted to hear it or not, would be like, yeah, you would have just withered away to nothing. Like, I was saving you, giving you this because you had to have a reason to, because you're not really dead. You're in like an in-between place, the way she was, it's not spelled out explicitly, but they're not actually dead. They're just trapped in hell. So, but if you don't have anything to hope for, anything to strive for, anything to stay alive for except yourself, that's hard.
Yeah,
But as hard as it is to raise a child, at least it gives you a focus, it gives you a purpose, it gives you a thing to care about that isn't yourself. And we can all use that.
very true. And it changes you as a person,
Yeah,
hopefully for the better. I think it did for Circe. So, it,
certainly.
yeah, it
Certainly.
worked out. But she has every right to be pissed because, like, she
Yes.
Diana was stolen of a lot too. So she can be pissed by the whole situation, and I will not judge her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will definitely be getting into some of that stuff. So,
I'm really excited. So, as we wrap up, do you have any new projects we should keep an eye out for?
well, I can't really talk about the thing that's on the horizon. I'm not
Of course.
sure when that will be announced, but I could just say Black Cloak number 10 comes out next week. It's Jeff Venom War, which is a really fun one shot, and you don't have to have read the Venom War stuff that isn't Jeff related. That comes out next week as well. A lovely pre Thanksgiving treat for the Americans. And then the week of Thanksgiving is Wonder Woman number 2, I guess. Um, so that's really exciting. I have to say the issue 3 comes out on Christmas, and I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work. Hopefully the orders get in early, I guess. I don't know. The implication to me was that that will happen, but that issue is absolutely devastating. I hope everybody cries for Christmas.
That I
It's
I'm so excited to cry on Christmas.
I do think it's a good cry. Like, it's
Hmm.
emotional. It's like holy shit. But that issue is yeah, I love it. It's a great Christmas issue. If I if I had known, I couldn't have written it more. I mean, there are no Christmas trees in it or anything ridiculous. I'm just saying, like, the sentiment and like asking you to sort of believe a little bit. It's a good issue. It's my favorite issue next to one right now. I know we've only had a few out, but I think 1 and 3 will maybe forever be some of my favorites. So we'll see.
I'm really excited to see why it's your favorite. And I'm really excited for Venom War Jeff's edition because I have followed this Venom War to every little zombie out. And like at this point I'm just kind of like, are we there yet? Because I feel like I've
Yeah.
seen it end in like three different comics here.
Well, I forgot you said you're a Spider-Man fan. Of
Yeah.
course, you're dealing with this. Well, here's the good news. Jeff is an incredible little palate cleanser if you're a little tired of it. I think it's very fun. It's also his longest adventure yet.
Oh,
And the West Coast Avengers, some of them, 4 of them, guest star with him in it. So it's like a fun little reunion of where he began. It's been great.
well, I'm really
And
excited
Guri
for
Hero,
that.
let's just say Guri Hero. I mean, they're the best. Talk about talk about. I mean, I wrote a car wash into the script, like one of those automated American ones, like where you could drive through and it's all the brushes and everything like that you'd see at a gas station or something. So I wrote one of those in there, and I was like, maybe we make it like King of the Seas themed, like a Namor ripoff or something. And they drew like the cutest, most ridiculous King of the Seas car wash, like iconography and stuff. It's like when you're getting like even that out of just the design of the car wash, it's like, I mean, it's a pure joy, pure joy.
That sounds incredible. I love that little
Yeah.
freaking shark.
Read read Venom War after you read Wonder Woman 3 maybe. Like read Venom War, read Jeff Venom War, next week when it comes out, and then hold on to it and read it after you read Absolute Wonder Woman 3 on Christmas because you might need the chaser.
I want Wonder Woman, Absolute Wonder Woman, to damage me emotionally. I want to feel it for years. I want my children's children to know about it. Oh,
Sorry, I
oh,
sneezed.
I thought it stopped recording, and I was like, oh my God,
No, no,
what did
no.
I
I
do?
was just protecting you and everyone from
I
my indelicate sneezing.
appreciate that. So, where can our listeners find you so we can hear all these amazing things that are going to be announced?
So the best place to stay in touch is my Substack. That there's a free newsletter, so you can just know what's coming out and hear my dumb stories. Sometimes it won't overwhelm you. We're lucky if we get to maybe 3 issues out a month. And there's a paid tier if you want comics and commenting and to like become a part of the community. There's also for annual backers, there's like a monthly giveaway, although I'm behind on all of those. Sorry, guys. And then I pretty much have abandoned Twitter now with the
Yeah.
AI stuff and the blocking issues, not to mention, all the other
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty much shutting that account down. I'll try to maintain it, but I'm not going to be around there. But I am on Blue Sky, which is going very well. I think the comics community in particular is quite vibrant there. People are really sort of finding their way. Um, I I will probably never get involved and attached to social media as I was back in the Twitter days. We've all sort of been burned by that.
Yeah.
But I have to say, right now, Blue Sky does have early Twitter vibes. So if you've been missing the like nice social interaction that it used to provide, you can find it at least for now on Blue Sky. So if you haven't given up on social media entirely, it would definitely be where I would plant things. I technically also have an Instagram, but because of the AI data scraping there too, I feel like a little conflicted about, when I post, most of what I post are other artists' work because you want this visual to go with whatever you're saying, right? And I just
Yeah.
don't feel great about posting that on sites where I know it's going to be scraped. So I've been trying to diminish my presence there as well. It's weird times we find ourselves in.
It's a very weird times.
Oh,
And oh,
I,
go ahead.
I didn't actually say the so it's 1979 semifinalist.substack.com, and on Blue Sky I'm just Kelly Thompson.
Yeah. It's it's Blue Sky. I've been digging it myself. Did you know there's only 20 employees running it? Only 20.
I mean, I think they need to hire because
I
I
know.
don't want it to go down now after
I
all
know.
this.
They said this like they wrote a thread today that was He was like, this was originally an idea for Twitter, but we took it with it. It's blue sky because the idea was to open the cage for the bird.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, now I like you guys even more because you're adorable.
Yeah. They are. They are. But yeah, I hope they can handle the traffic because it's pretty incredible. Like the influx over the last two whatever weeks.
Yeah, they've crashed a few times and they said it was 1 million per employee. And I was like, come on, guys. Just like, you got to do
Time to
better.
hire.
I'm nervous.
Time to
So,
hire.
so if you haven't picked up Absolute Wonder Woman, written by the amazing Kelly, there's no time like the present. Hit up your local comic shop, give it a read, and then come back to Nerd Initiative and tell us how much you loved it because I know you will, and it's okay. Thank you, Kelly, for coming on. You are an absolute pleasure. Thank you for all you do in the comic book world, and congratulations to all you've done. Please feel free to drop by anytime.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're totally. If you're a comic book fan, movie nerd, TV show junkie, come check out nerdinitiative.com where we review all of the above. We have new content dropping almost every day, covering so much nerd culture. Drop by, check us out. You'll love it. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter, or you can just make it easy and click the link in the show notes wherever you're listening to or watching this interview. You can find me on my podcast, Vigilante Vibes, which is a non toxic Marvel podcast. And on that note, have a great night.